Natalie, welcome. I am super thrilled to be talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me here, Bye. It's a true pleasure.
Hmm, Same here, because I want to share with the listeners, and anybody participating in our conversation, that I heard about you and I heard you speak on Raj Jana's podcast, and I would encourage anybody to check it out. It's one of the more recent episodes, and I love the energy,
Mhm.
and I thought it will be such a beautiful energy to invite, more people into, and and I think we will all play today.
Yes, we love a
Yeah,
little play.
exactly. And you know what? I wanted to share with you this funny thing. So, like, after I listened to your conversation, I went for a walk, and and actually I had a guy approach me. It was like, that nowadays it's pretty rare that it happens, like as far as like it feels like everybody either meets through friends or online dating, right? I think it's pretty scary for people to approach now and meet people in person, on the street. So I just was like, I think just your energy amplified, and put me or help put me in some sort of a state, more receptive, like playful state. I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. Let's like share it. Let's, have movement. And that's why I reached out to you, that I wanted to have the conversation. So thank you for being
I love
here.
hearing that story. My partner Raj, like when he first met me, described me as a walking invitation. And that's what I'm hearing when you're sharing your experience of being in the park and somebody approaching is like they can sense your yes, they can sense your receptivity and your openness. And it's so beautiful when the world responds.
Yeah, a walking invitation. I love that because don't we want to be that in any area of our life in a way, right? In a healthy way?
Yeah, it's how being a walking invitation requires a sense of safety and trust in self and your discernment. But essentially, when you're a walking invitation as a woman, you are a yes to life. And when you're a yes to life, opportunities find you. Your desires get magnetized towards you, and everything that is meant for you finds you when you're a walking invitation and you're open and receptive and encouraging of the world around you to approach you versus being armored, guarded in your head, trying to protect and, all of this. Life has to sort of work around you in this awkward way. And so being a walking invitation invites in a sense of ease and grace and flow and play and co-creation.
I think that was another thing that it stood out to me in your conversation saying yes to life. So walking invitation and saying yes to life.
Mm,
And it's like this beautiful, I like how you say that it comes from trust. So a walking invitation does not mean that um you have to be scared like people will take advantage of you, or you will say like you're open to everything without discernment. That's what I'm hearing you say.
yeah, totally. Absolutely. Like it takes a level of inner safety
Mhm.
to be a yes to life. And it takes a level of trust, right? Listening and sensing your body and how she's responding. Like, for example, when that man approached you, your body in that moment, I would imagine, had like a reaction of like, if it didn't feel aligned, maybe there would be some tension or, ooh, let me take a left and start walk. But it's like it takes that listening, that deep listening to your body, so that requires self-trust. It requires having a frequent dialogue with yourself because when you are a walking invitation, you're in constant communion with your body and with the world around you.
During the day, many times we go, 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 right? We are producing these outcomes, whether it's for a company, our clients, for work or our business. And this is a different energy. And I wanted to ask you, how did you get there? Because I mean, it's so palpable, and this is what I like, it's so powerful. And this is also one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, is because I think you empower
Mm.
so many other people and women to
Mm.
connect with it.
Mm. Yeah, this is a beautiful question, and I love what you said in the beginning of how do I not be too open, right? And this is where anytime there's questions of how do I, what if I, we know immediately that the mind, the head brain is now engaged, the mental gates, I call it.
Mhm.
And so, what I like to say with the women I work with is either you're open or you're not. When we start to manipulate the degree of openness, we've missed the point. And so that's why there's a big, quivering, aching vulnerability in being open and non-negotiably open, and trusting our own boundaries with our words, with our emanation of energy, with our inner strength and fortitude and our inner power, trusting those things to safeguard us, to safeguard that opening. Like, and so you would ask, how did I get here? Like, it was a slow journey of, like, think of one of my favorite flowers are peonies. Are you familiar with peonies?
I love
And
peonies. It's like one of my
and
favorite flowers. Yes.
first see a peony, it is a tight, tight, tight bud, right?
Mhm.
But if you give it the right conditions and the time, it opens up into like thousands of petals. And every day there's like new petals. And so this is the journey of feminine awakening, is we can't force jam or put a timeline on or even have an expectation of when we become open. And so that's the first step, is like being like, I have a desire to be a little bit softer. I have a desire to be a little bit more trusting. I have a desire to be a little bit more surrendered to life. And knowing that even just that desire has started the journey without
Mm,
even knowing how you get there, if you get there, when you get there, or what that even looks like when you quote unquote arrive. So
mhm,
it's releasing, it's just allowing yourself, the first step is allowing yourself to have that desire of like, oh my gosh, what would it be like if I was a little less tense? What
mhm,
would it be like if I was a little bit more supple? Right? Just allowing yourself to play and imagine what you would walk through the world like. What might you wear? How might you interface with men, etc.? And just let yourself be in that moment and just let yourself dream in that moment, in the safety of your heart, in the safety of your own home, in the safety of your own thoughts, and the intimacy of all that.
mm,
And then, even just that, even just that desire starts to shift things for you.
mm,
Because as women, it is our truest state to be a walking invitation. We are receptive, right? We receive sperm, right? We receive ideas and then we create. And so it is your true nature as a woman to be soft and surrendered and supple and playful and inviting and flirtatious.
mm,
However, we live in a world where big T, little t traumas come in, where societal conditioning comes in that teaches us to hustle and grind, like you're sharing in the beginning of like a lot of the women in your field are like so good at doing,
mhm,
that the process of being a walking invitation is just simply, although not so simply, a process of being.
mhm,
And it's a process of undoing. It's a process of undoing so much of the armor that we've put up, so much of the beliefs that we have operating like, if I'm an open invitation, I'll get taken advantage of, right? So it's a multi-layered journey, just like that peony, petal at a time, one
mhm.
petal at a time. And we can't force it, rush it. We just have to allow it.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you force the peony, right, you will just mess it all up. It's
Yeah,
not
all
going
the,
to be
all
as
the petals will
beautiful.
just fall down and it gets all droopy and then it's lost its magic. And we live in a world with like GMO and like, pesticides where it's like we're forcing fruits to be bared, and we're forcing sunflowers to grow year round in climates that they shouldn't be. And that's what's happening to us as women, is we're living in a world that forgets that we have menstrual cycles, and that we bleed, and that we get tired, and that we need rest, and all of these things that make us really unique as women, you know?
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that's why a conversation like what you're sharing, the way you're talking, it's kind of like many times, and I know it's been like that, and sometimes it is still for me to grow from the doing to this being mode and the openness and the playfulness. Honestly, play probably has been one of the hardest things. It's like, what's play? What's actually fun? Like, I know how to
Mm.
work, I know how to achieve, and whatever, whether it's from traumas or it's something planted, in us. We're all different and unique. Um, but I think your words, and you have a gift and a talent sometimes, to facilitate that, right? To bring that and open, like help that unwinding
Mm.
and that opening up and kind of that transition, because sometimes it's like I think we all here are connected, right? Like we all need each other, and that's why like everybody has their own unique gifts. And I think that is, you know I know that it can be hard for women to go from that one state to the other, but I think you help people get there
Yeah.
quicker, even with the
Well,
words that you speak and the energy that you give.
yes, yes. Thank you for that reflection. And this is like what's so beautiful about that reflection that you just offered, is it's a reminder that as women, as feminine beings, we actually teach by being our own transmission, by emanating, right? So by being that peony on the kitchen counter that people want to come up and like touch and smell, we lead with our energy and our tone and our beingness. And so it's less about the words that we say and the qualifications on our resume and how many clients I have and how much money I have in the bank, but it's how do you feel when you're sitting next to me,
Mm.
right? Do you feel safe? Do you feel seen? Do you feel a little playful? Like that's the teaching as women, is the energy that we emanate, the energy that we emanate. And the more open we are and the more yes we are, the more what's inside can come out in its own unique expression for every unique woman.
I love that, and I'd love to maybe go. There's so many questions I want to ask you, and so many like little paths I can go down from what you're saying. But
Mm.
I'd love for you to share your own journey of how you've gotten, your own blossoming journey, right? Of that peony from going from a plant. It takes peonies quite a long time to get to their full size, and blossoming, to be a bigger plant. I have some peony plants in the front and I love them, but it took, from a small plant, it took several years, and they're still not fully grown.
Yeah.
And so would you share, and I know it's not going to be like a one sentence answer, but I'd love for you to untangle and share your journey of the blossoming.
Yes, thank you for this word blossoming. I love it so much. And what's so beautiful about the feminine way, I'll just speak to this before I go into the answer, is we're eternally blossoming.
Mm.
It's almost like, unlike the peony that reaches her peak and then that's it, we are eternally like being born and dying, being born and dying. And so in this moment that you and I are meeting, like I'm at a certain moment in my feminine awakening, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much more that I'm growing into. And so, if I were to, I mean, when women meet me now and then they hear about the life that I was living, like it's like shocking. And it's why I do the work that I do, because I cannot take women on the path that I have not walked myself. Because on this path, so much comes up: shame, guilt, unworthiness, societal conditioning, patriarchal programming, proving, people pleasing. I mean, the list goes on. And so I walked this journey courageously on my own and then realized, oh, this is sort of kind of how we get there, you know? And so, I'm 38 now. When I was 28, I was just going through a divorce. I was young and divorced and going through all of the shame around that. And I was in the medical field at the time doing cardiac nursing and finishing up grad school. I was on the path to like opening up my own medical practice, about to plan having babies, finishing up my degree. I mean, super. And I was like a marathon runner and a CrossFit gymmer and like waking up at 5 a.m. and like going to the CrossFit gym before clocking in for 13-hour days and drinking like 3 coffees a day. I mean, and I had to be there to understand the impact that that lifestyle, which by the way was very rewarded,
Mhm.
being a nursing professor and a practitioner and having the degrees and all, and the white picket fence and all of it was rewarded, we'll say. But I had to feel the impact that it had on me, like, and I didn't know how to word that at the time, but there was something in me that was dying inside. There was something in me like a butterfly that was just waiting to emerge. And so, eternal gratitude for that moment in my life where I got divorced, because it was a pivotal moment for me, where I started the journey of unbecoming and unlearning a lot of those systems, and eventually decided to leave the medical field and pursue fully yoga. And I opened up a yoga studio with my twin sister and dove deeper into like the tantric arts. And so moved away from like prescribing medications when people are sick to like going upstream and being like, let's amplify their wellness. And how can we do that from the body? And so that was like my journey of like medical to healer. And so of course I discovered a lot in that process. And then when the pandemic hit, we closed our studio, which was a total curveball, total curveball. And again, another surrender and another surrender and another surrender, and listening to the whispers of the wind. Where do I go next? What will you have me do? And it landed me in the jungles of Costa Rica.
Just like that.
Boom, I just appeared in the jungle somehow. And it took a lot of courage and a lot of unknowns. And that is really where the path to the feminine awakening began for me,
Okay.
because I was in complete surrender. Like all the things I had planned for vanished. And so I had to surrender. I didn't have to, I chose to. I had to listen to the whispers of my body. I had to like just follow the call of her, and her at that moment was the jungle.
Mm.
And then in that process, I've been living there full time for the last 3 years. I unplugged from, all of these systems of the modern world intentionally. I deleted my social media for a few years. I like unsubscribed from Netflix. I stopped drinking coffee. All of those things just brought me closer and closer to me,
Mhm.
and turned down the noise and allowed me to feel the things I hadn't felt before, and allowed me to like sit in space and stillness and silence. And space and stillness and silence are such a big piece of the unfolding, you
Mhm.
know? And then I started taking women on the same journey after I walked myself through that initiatory experience. Yeah. Like in a
Wow.
nutshell, that's kind of how it went over like a 10-year period. But I would say the feminine awakening really began for me in the last like 5 years.
Wow. So you were on a track, like on the ladder that many people are, right? In their 20s. You think about the education, the career, the income, that will get you, the house and the family, and, on track with checking, checking the boxes, that we all kind of, many of us aspire to, right? And think that's what we want, that's what we need, or that's where we're going. So it
Mm.
took you, it's interesting because I got divorced also around 28, 29.
Mm.
Uh, but it took, I mean, usually when you make these big directional changes, it comes from pain.
Mm.
Like
Mm.
many times for many people, like they're brought to their knees, right? To make a
Mm.
huge shift
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
that. Many of us not are not very proactive. When things are going great, on the up and up, we're not necessarily diving into our, untangling, and unwinding and the spiritual work. We usually start saying those prayers, right? And asking whatever, universe, creator, God, whatever you want to call it, right? When we
Mm.
feel like something's off. So how did you shift? Like, okay, so still kind of helping people, and the health was still an underlying kind of mission. You just went from doing it this kind of following this model,
Mhm.
the, nursing, you went to the more Eastern, whatever, more natural way, right? The yoga through a different modality, essentially. So how did you make, because it takes a huge courage, tremendous amount of courage. If you're
Mm.
on the track, right? You built, you invested, right?
Mm.
And probably, like you said, many people are applauding you.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah, all the accolades are very held in high regard by society. And like
Yeah.
what I like to say is I was a very good girl, you know? I was doing all the things right. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you, like, what happened that sparked that, okay, no, I'm stopping this, I'm going this way?
Well, I think that it was a slow unfolding. You know, it was a while the decisions were like, okay, this is a choice point moment. You know, me getting divorced was a moment of oh, like, oh, I have power to make choice, and yes, it has massive impact on myself and the world around me and my family, but like I have power to make a choice if something's not in alignment for me. And that's okay. It's like I say to women a lot, like as the feminine, we ruin the moment quite a bit. You know, if we're truly living in our truth and we're unsubscribing from people pleasing paradigms, like we ruin moments. And that's a big part of what we do. And there's so much beauty in that as well. And so at 28, getting divorced and signing those papers, like I was ruining a big moment, you know, societally and within the structures of my family. And that was empowering for me. It was still heartbreaking and devastating, and it took me years to move through it. And then with the transition out of the medical field, it was also a slow unfolding. And when I look back, I'm like, I was me all along. You know, when I was nursing, I was teaching, I was compassionately like kneeling at their bedside as they were dying or as they were giving birth, or like looking at their family member and like being like, how are you doing? You know, I was always aware of the holistic approach of a person and where they are in their journey, and not just checking boxes of like 9 a.m. meds and 12 a.m. meds and discharge paperwork and all that. I was really like very shamanistic and like medicine woman in the medical system. And then I became a nursing professor and I had my cohort of students, and I realized what it's like to pass on knowledge, to pass on wisdom, and like the impact that that has and how rewarding that was. And that's really when like my coaching mentorship hat
Mhm. Like
came
leadership, right?
leadership. Totally. And then synchronistically, I had this intuitive hit January of 2020. So this was before the pandemic came, 2 months before the pandemic, or a few months. I think it's time for me to leave the medical field. And the reason why I made that decision was because the studio that we opened, the yoga studio and spa we opened, was thriving and I loved it so much. And we were building community, and I was at a choice point. Do I go all in or not? Because the world benefits so much when we go all in on something. And so I left the medical field in January to go all in on my studio. Little did I know that
What's
there would be a pandemic. I think this was all like intuitive and divine orchestration. And then of course I go all in on the studio and months later we had to close it. It's like the cosmic joke, you know? That we can never plan. But what we can do is continue to listen. Listen. Where am I being called in this moment and in the next moment and in the next moment, you know?
So when did you start this beautiful journey of listening? And what is your practice? Like, do you s- say a prayer? Do you see, like, when
Mhm.
did you start it and what kind of can you share, like maybe with others who are sitting at the
Yeah.
choice point, right? And want to know the answers.
Yeah, that's such a great question. For me personally, like the first thing that comes up is like when I started practicing yoga, like decades ago. This was like, again, it took a lot for me to even dip my toe in that world because I was like, how many calories am I burning and is it worth my time and blah blah blah. I was like still in that mindset. And then eventually I like started to dip my toe into yoga and in shavasana at the very end when you're in stillness for like 5 minutes. Oh. Ooh, I feel a little anxious. Ooh, I'm noticing tension in my shoulders. Like I got a little dose, a little glimpse for a few days a week, for 5 minutes at a time, what it was like to listen. And then the impact of that had me wonder, what if I just slowed down a little bit? Because then I would leave the yoga class, and for the rest of the evening, I would be walking a little slower. I'd be talking a little slower. And then another practice that's been foundational for me is journaling as well. I've been a journaler since I was 9. I've always put pen to paper, and so that was also a practice for me that I highly recommend. Just a journaling practice is a really, because you don't have to be there's no access point. Anybody can journal,
Mhm.
you know. And so it's a moment to just put pen to paper. I love it the old-fashioned way, pen to paper, and just let the monkey mind and all the static of the modern world clear. And then what wants to come through? What from that universal conscious stream wants to come through? I write poetry. I surprise myself when I write. I'm like, I didn't even write that, you know? And I would say now, like you heard me say this on the podcast that you discovered me on, is sadhana, daily practice, is the most important piece of everything that I be and do and teach and am, is cultivating a moment for yourself, ideally in the morning before the day happens, where you can just be with self, capital S. And I recommend not even checking your phone before that happens, because again, then you start to get scattered, and then you get tangled in the web of technology and social media and your kids needing you and everything. Is like, can you just tiptoe out of bed onto your yoga mat, sit down, light a candle, and be with yourself for a moment, and then do it again the next day.
I
Yeah.
love that. So sadhana, what is it, sadhana? Is that a morning practice?
So sadhana, I'm a Kundalini teacher, and sadhana is a Kundalini philosophy. It's Sanskrit. It translates to like a daily practice.
Mhm.
And what it really is anything that we do. So for me, it's Kundalini yoga. For you, it might be rock climbing, or drinking a morning cacao, or a morning jog, or sitting in meditation. What it is a daily practice where you get to evoke the divinity within, the magic within, the spark within, the curiosity within, the play within, there's something bigger here happening, right? And the key to it is to do it every day. And so, and I can hear like the voices of the women listening of like, I don't have time to do that every day. Or like, what about every other day? Or how about just on Sundays? Because that's when my kids are at the grandparents. Every day. And so for some women, that literally might be like when I start with women, I offer them like a poem, like a book of poems. And I'm like, just read one poem a day and let that be your sadhana, you know? Or like sit and have your morning coffee with not in a to-go mug, not while you're scrolling or checking your email, but just be with your beverage for 5 minutes. That can be your sadhana.
Oh my God, because how many times we just mindlessly, right? Drink and it's like gone, right? You didn't even notice having that and enjoy it at least, right?
Totally. And so I'm a big advocate of there's nothing you need to do to make a sadhana good or bad or right or wrong or correct or worthwhile, as long as it's something that inspires you. And so for me, what inspires me is beauty and scent. And so I have a little altar where I have like a couple house plants. And I always have like my little Palo Santo and my incense, and I have my herbal Tulsi tea that I sip. And like those are the things that lure me to my mat because it smells good and it feels good. And as women, that's really important that we feel good, you know, and that we feel good in our body and that we feel yummy. And so creating something for yourself where your senses are online and then that you're fully present for, which is why I'm like, don't check the WhatsApp threads or the texts until you've done your thing, whatever that thing is. Drop in, close your eyes, sip your thing, whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's 3 minutes or an hour and a half. Make it realistic, make it exciting, make it inviting, and you'll do it, you know? And eventually it will do you.
I like that.
Like, of course, it's going to take a little effort to create momentum, right? And this is where we put our big girl pants on and we show up and we do it, you know? And of course, there will be resistance, but that doesn't mean we don't show up. And so I always like to say, like, if we only walked on the days that are sunny, we wouldn't get very far.
Mm.
But we show up on the days we don't feel like it. We show up on the days that I slept through my alarm and that means I have less time. We show up on the days that our 2-year-old is sick and that means we have to shift it around a little bit. But the point is that we keep on showing up. And when we show up for ourselves consistently, so much inner healing happens for us because you're saying you're worth it. You're creating a sense of inner safety, trust, integrity with yourself. This isn't about checking a box or reporting back to a fitness coach that you did good and that you did the thing. You know, it's for you.
So this brings me to what we were talking about earlier, because this is how you build the trust, right? This is how you build that trust, and then you don't have to use just one faculty, which is your mind. It's just a tool versus letting the mind run everything. Is that then
Mm.
you don't have to worry or figure it out that hard if this is the right person, if this is the right opportunity, if this will work, if this person will, not be good or will be good for you, because you build the trust within
Mm,
yourself.
mm, yes. I'm so glad you pulled those pieces together because exactly, it's like if we go back to the beginning of this conversation of being the walking invitation, right? And being the yes to life, from
Mhm.
my philosophy, it starts when we show up for our daily practice because you're not just creating trust in your mind, your nervous system is like, okay, like she's new to this thing. She said she's gonna do it. Oh, she showed up again. Cool. We can relax a little bit. She showed up again. I can relax a little bit. Not only did she show up, but she's listening to her anger and she's listening to her inner critic and oh my gosh, all of me is welcome here. Oh wow, this feels really good. And so there's a lot of healing on so many levels: nervous system, physical body, emotional body, sense of safety that starts to happen when we show up for ourselves every day. And what's so important, and I see this happen so much with my clients, is like in the beginning they interface with their daily practice from the old paradigm of I did my homework, I did the thing, I did good, I got an A plus. And slowly they start to unlearn that and they like then start to actually feel the effect of the nourishment and the vitality and the joy and the safety and the ease that begins to move through your body when you have a consistent daily practice. And it doesn't mean perfect either,
Mhm.
you know? And it's like one thing I like to share is like there's days where I don't show up to my mat, you know? There's days where I'm like maybe I have my new partner and I are like making love in bed all morning and I don't show up, and then I maybe don't show up again, and then I'm like, ooh, I feel like super cranky and super irritable and my like fuse is shorter, and then I remember. So it's like not showing up is just as valuable as the showing up, you
Mm.
know?
I love that because I mean, like, we can also get into the perfection, right? And then like use that against ourselves, and then, I love the fluidity and, life. We have to allow for life, and as long as we show up most, right? Like much of the time, right? It doesn't have to be perfection.
Ah, yeah, and it's like for the women listening and those listening, I'm curious, like as we even say that, can you feel the sense of ease in your body, right? Can you feel like maybe your shoulders drop a little bit when it's like, oh, it doesn't need to be perfect. And oh, like as long as you're doing your best, like my teacher Guru Singh says, do what you can do and feel good about that. Do
Mhm.
what you can do and feel good about that. That's the healing, is like, what's the inner dialogue? And what's our relationship like to our practice? Because you could show up every day, but have a drill sergeant inside of you.
Yeah.
That drill sergeant ain't gonna be the walking invitation, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah. Whatever we use against ourselves, and the self-criticism is definitely weakening the vibration, our own aura and our own power. And I wanted, so what I loved when you said about this practice is um the engaging of the senses. Because like, let's say so many women work with behind the computers, right? Either in corporate, in offices, from home, whatever. It's a lot of sitting, a lot of mental stimulation work. Um,
Mm.
so I think that really helps. Like, I loved how you listed the benefits also, because I'm sure there will be people who will think, well, why would I do all these things? Is it frivolous, right? But I loved how you talked about engaging your senses, and I wanted to ask you, do you want to also move your body?
Mm.
Because sometimes there
Are
are
you, are you,
people who for the morning practice, because
ah,
sometimes people will just do meditation, but it's also kind of like sitting and a little bit like more, I mean, it is spiritual,
mm.
but again, you're not really necessarily engaging the body.
Totally. That's a beautiful question, especially as it relates to like feminine embodiment. And my answer to that is in the beginning, it doesn't matter. So it's multi-layered. I would say in the beginning, let's just get you showing up for yourself every day. If you're sitting stationary outside on your patio, sipping coffee, looking at the birds, great. If you're journaling in a cozy nook in your corner kitchen, great. If you're taking a walk, great. Create that pathway of prioritizing yourself. Create that pathway of making space for yourself non-negotiable every day. Let that become
Mhm.
deeply ingrained. Meet the inner resistances that come up. Meet all the reasons why you haven't done it yet for your whole life come up. Move that through your body, create safety in your nervous system, and then you can start getting creative and be like, do I want to do morning movement? Do I want to dance? Do I want to do self-pleasure? Do I want to do kundalini? Do I take, like, there's so many options. But in the beginning, I just say to women, pick something, and we usually co-create it together that you want to be a yes for, whatever that is.
I love that.
And then you can start to move the body. So the second layer is absolutely, because the feminine way is down and in.
Hmm.
Feminine is down and in. Meditation is a very up and out masculine practice. So the feminine is like, ooh, like non-linear movement, moving in circles, doing things that don't make sense, like making noise, feeling your emotions, like, yeah, getting out in nature and things like this. And those things can be layered on once you have created the cadence of doing something every day. Then you can get creative. And so the path of feminine awakening is like, in my philosophy, is create safety first. Then you start to become playful. Then you start to become creative. Then we can start talking about sexuality and sensuality and intimacy and relating. But like, let's create the metronome and the consistency, which is actually a masculine principle, is consistency, reliability, uh, in integrity, doing the thing, right? Just like the sun rises every day. The sun is a very masculine force. It rises at almost the same time every day. it's consistent. And that masculine principle of a sadhana, daily practice, creates a safe space, a safe container for then you, woman, to wildly express,
Mm.
to wildly be, to explore her play and her creativity, yeah, her imagination.
I love that. I love how you're talking about the sun, and the sun is also a very giving force, right? Also masculine, right? A very giving.
Yes, giving is a very masculine trait. And like a lot of times when women are like looking to interface and relate to the masculine in a way that's healthier, I say to them, go outside. How do you feel in the sun? Because that's the man. He's a man. Can you like expose your shoulder a little bit? Can you be a little vulnerable with the sun? Okay, get comfortable with that, and then we can talk about like the date you're going on next week.
Mhm. I love it because like soaking up the sun, right? And all the goodness. Like you said, the sun always rises every day, you know, no
Yeah.
matter no matter what. And it's so funny. I was listening to an Enrique Iglesias song before we started. Um, and like one of the lyrics, it ties into the poetry that like I love the suggestion of incorporating poetry because
Mm.
kind of like awakening all these. I think we do need to put in extra quote unquote effort in awakening these senses because we are so mentally, right? Everything is flowing out of the mind and we are taught like to control, to manage, to lead, like in certain ways we operate in the day to day, and so much flows out of the mind that I feel like that all kind of we have to be intentional about balancing and involving and opening up, stimulating, engaging, kind
Mm.
of like even those other senses. And in that song, the Enrique Iglesias song, it was talking about the sun kissing the sea, with
Mm.
every sunrise or sunset, right? The sun, you're watching the sun over the waterline, right?
And what's interesting, like, and I experience this a lot, like when I am just out in the world at the grocery store or, dinner with my parents and meeting their friends and like, explaining a little bit about what I do. And I say, I'm a sensuality mentor and an intimacy mentor. The first thing people think is like, oh, sex.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, like, yes, that may come down the road, but like this sensuality is just using all your senses. You
Yeah,
know,
engaging
it's
in
why
life.
like I have a yummy beverage and I have the Palo Santo and I have like a flower here that inspires me. Like you can work a 9 to 5. You don't have to live in the jungle. You can work a 9 to 5 and create a sensual experience all around you all the time.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. And like, so what if we can go back to the place of how you felt before? Like, what prompted this decision to go to Costa Rica, right? To change so
Mhm.
drastically. What place were you in? And then what opened up?
Mm. I'm curious, have you ever read the book The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer? Are you familiar with that book?
No, mm-mm. But is he the
Surrender
one
Experiment.
who singer? Is he the one who talked like wrote Untethered?
Yes, yes. He
I've
wrote
read that.
Untamed.
Like I love it. Yeah.
And so he wrote a book, highly recommend it for anyone listening too, called The Surrender Experiment. And it was basically like, and this is a true story of his life, of like, what happens when I just say yes to things that are being presented to me? Like, so going back to the example from the beginning for you of like this gentleman walking up to you at the park, right? And so what happens from that state of being a walking invitation when we say yes to life, when we trust if it's here, it's because it's meant for me, you know? And so I read that book and I was working with a coach at the time and like, well, COVID happened. That was a total choiceless choice for that whole experience to unfold. And in that moment I had two choices. Do I push and force and grip and keep our studio open and make it work and do the right thing? And no. What else is possible? What doors are open? What other way can I move through this quote unquote like inconvenience? You know, can I relate to it in a way of this is happening for me?
Mm.
This is happening for me. I walk through open doors. Where's the door open right now? So that moment of choosing to close the studio was a surrender experiment. And then every moment after that, I sold everything I owned, almost everything I owned, so that I didn't have to leave things in storage and so that I could pack up my car with my dog and my sister and hit the road into the wild unknown. That was an surrender experiment, and it was terrifying. And I was grieving the loss of our business and our community, and what was happening politically, and our world was just like chaos. But I had been a year into a daily practice at that time, so I had something to keep me anchored, to keep me grounded, to remind me that the peace is in here.
Mhm.
The safety is in here. The voice is in here, right? And even on the road when we were traveling, I showed up every day at my altar. And I just listened and did the next best thing. And somehow I ended up in Costa Rica, right? It wasn't like a 5-year plan, 10-year plan. It wasn't on my vision board. I had no vision board. I just listened. And so for me, it's Costa Rica. For some people, it's entering that devotional partnership. For some people, it's leaving that marriage. For some people, it's starting their own business. For some people, it's closing their business. It looks different for everybody, you know?
And that's a beautiful, and as we perceive it, the hard thing, that it is so individual and you can't
Mhm.
just copy somebody else's playbook
Yes.
model. Would you
Yes.
say that, like, at that time, because many people are right now sitting with their questions, sitting with their lack of clarity or confusion, seeking for answers, whether it's like what to do next, what would be that fulfilling work, relationship, life, looking at life, is this really how I want to continue the next years, next 10 years, is this, that is when I'm on the road I'm on, like fulfilling and really my dream life, right? And not even knowing sometimes where to start if you have like the house, the family, the obligations, right? Um, did you say that at that point of time, your purpose or kind of what you were doing is just doing the best you could every day, or
Yes.
like receiving daily direction?
Yeah, I love this question, and I would go so far as to refine it even more to doing the right thing in every moment. Because even when we use the word best, it creates like ooh, that means that there's something wrong, like there's a right and a wrong. There's a qualifying factor. It's tuning into like what feels right and rightful now, not even today, now, in this now moment. And of course there's value in planning, and in of course we own businesses, like we understand the value of like planning and scheduling and structure, because again, masculine containment. But what the feminine does, the masculine looks to the future, he's the visionary, and again, we all have that inside of us. The feminine is like, how can we go deeper into this now moment? And the way there is through our bodies. So it's like, how's my breathing right now? Like when I'm being asked out on that date, is my jaw clenching? Is my womb contracting? Ooh, there's information there. Do I feel open, expanded, soft, and relaxed? Ooh, there's information there. But of course, it's a high level skill to be able to have that conversation with your body. But it just takes having that conversation every day in a daily practice, right? Slowing down, creating space, not spending as much time online and being fed what everybody else is doing and how everyone else is living their best life. And like, come back here to the temple of your heart, you know?
Why is it so hard for us to do that, to come back to us? We want to grasp for everything else outside of.
Because we live in a consumeristic, capitalistic world that teaches us that everything we need is outside of us, and everything is better when there's more of it.
Mhm.
Right? So if I buy more, read more, take another online course, go to another this, take another vitamin, do another more, outside, outside, outside. And so the journey is like less, less, less. Like the journey from like the immature feminine to the woman is like the immature feminine like wants more, is grasping. It's never enough, waiting for somebody to save her, waiting for the good to come. The woman, the initiated woman, knows that she is the good to come,
Mm.
needs less because she knows she is enough and she's operating from wholeness. The world doesn't raise little girls or little boys to teach them that they are whole as they are.
Mm.
We live in a world that's like do another art class after school and learn, pick up another instrument and play another sport and do more and be more. And it's like, what about just like playing in the backyard and being with what is?
Mm.
You know, the simplicity. And so,
Mm.
so much, and this is why living in the jungle was such a big transformation for me, is like, and why the connection to nature is so important. Because, like, nature is so simple and it figures itself out. It's in harmony already. There's nothing it needs to do.
Yeah,
And
the
we're
tree is not striving.
the tree is just every day like kind of letting the sun allow it to grow, letting the soil feed it. You know,
Mm.
it's allowing itself to be enriched by life.
Mm.
And this is why like eliminating coffee was a big part of my journey of femininity. And like women I start working with are like, I don't know if I want to do that. But I'm like, when you reach for coffee, you're reaching for energy. You have energy right here. It's called Kundalini. It's moving up and down your spine, prana, you know. And if you're tired, so be it. Let yourself be tired. So,
Mm.
reaching for a coffee, reaching for safety in a man,
Mm.
right? All these things that we get outside of us. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of those things. Like having a hunky, safe man and drinking a nice latte, nothing wrong with it. And how can you cultivate that inside yourself first?
Yes. Yes. Because like I think so many things that we do is we want energy of other people. We want energy, and sometimes that's why also things don't work out because we're in that date, in that, seeing the friends, going out, in that job, like from my, we like tick, we have this like, but connect like coffee, right? These are all external sources of
Yeah.
energy in a way falsehood.
Yes.
And I love that you say that the
Yes.
first, right? Like
Yes.
connect with that energy, that life force energy in you
Yes.
for the
And
grasping.
I love if like for those of you who are watching the video right now, like I love how like watching your body of like this, right? So many of us as women are in a this mentality. We take, we grasp, we reach, we grip. That is not natural for us. What we do, what is natural for us is to stand in the vulnerability of existing and allow, receive, magnetize. That doesn't, there's no reaching there. But this is where it requires courage because the fear is like, but if I don't, will I get
It happened.
it? Will I be it? Will I become it? Can I do it? The feminine does not take, she receives. And that's a big one.
And that I think that's a very subtle but huge distinction.
Yes.
Because I
Yes.
think it can be very confusing with this whole receiving and the feminine and
Yes.
taking that like, well, then just like it's just passive, like kind of like the nuance can
Mm.
be lost or
Mm.
hard to understand.
Yeah. It is very nuanced, right? Like, because a lot of the feminine energetic is very subtle. And so that's why, really, the first step to all of this, before even like switching from taking to receiving, is slowing down so that you can just observe yourself. How do I walk through the world? Am I reaching? Am I grasping? Am I grabbing? Am I tight? Am I tense? It's like, My guess is a lot of the women who are listening to this, and there's no judgment here, it's just the way the world operates right now, most of us are taking.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's the world we live in. But this is where I like to say, like metaphorically, like sit on your hands. Sometimes you got to do that. You got to metaphorically sit on your hands because it's really hard not to take and grasp and grip and reach. Sit on your hands, take some deep breaths, and see what happens. And
Because when you said, like, I'm sitting on my hands. But when you were talking about the grasping, the reaching, right? It's always lack, lack, lack. And I just felt the anxiety, right? The energy that it comes from. I think we all can feel it, right?
yes, because there's quivering vulnerability. Like for those of you listening, like I even invite you to sit on your hands right now and just see how that feels. It's vulnerable, it's surrendered, you're seemingly helpless, right? But it's like, isn't it so much better? Like, here's a metaphor. Let's take the cookie jar that's on the counter, and you're a little kid, and you sneak into the kitchen, and you climb up on the counter, and you put your little grubby paws in the cookie jar, and you take the cookie, and then you get caught, and the cookie's like not as good that way. Versus, mom comes up to you with a plate and a freshly baked cookie and gives it to you. But you
Mm.
have to trust that you will receive it when it's rightful. You're not going to know when you receive it, if you receive it, how, but that's the mystery and the magic and the fun and the play.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
So I
Taking
really,
versus receiving. It's a big one. And you know, a lot of times this comes up with clients in the dating realm, right? Of like, okay, this comes up a lot in like when women are interfacing with a new man and they're like, should I text him? Should I not? Like, we just had a first date. Like, I loved it. Like, what should I do? And I'm like, I call it holding the tension. I'm like, sister, I'm like, hold the tension. Let yourself want him. Let yourself yearn for him. Let yourself like feel the uncomfortability of that pause of sitting on your hands and and just let yourself feel that. There's beauty in that. Don't fill the gap of your discomfort with action. Sit on your hands, take some deep breaths, do a practice, call a sister, and let life surprise you. Let
I,
him, let him penetrate the space. Let him give to you because there's nothing he wants more than to give. But if we're taking it, he can't give it.
yeah, I love that. And in a way, it brings up your own stuff and can you sit with it, right? It's again sitting on your hands, right? And like, what is it bringing up in you that you
Yes.
don't need to react to right away?
Yes, this is a big one. This is a big one. And because again, we live in a world capitalistic, consumeristic, Instagram, social media, Amazon now, Uber Eats, where we can get what we want instantly. That how often do we actually get to sit with just not having it? How often do we get to sit with just, oof, my desire is moving through me, right? And like gourmet food takes a hell of a lot longer to cook than fast food. And we
Fine
want
wine, like anything, like eight.
we want we want to live a gourmet life. We want to live a luxurious, yummy life. And so that means we gotta wait a little bit sometimes, you know?
I love that. And sometimes it also means like sitting with the neediness,
And
sitting with
even
the uncomfortable.
I love that you brought that word in, you know, it's like we have every right as women to want, to desire, to yearn, to be hungry, to crave. That is our nature. That is our nature. And society has labeled it as neediness, you know? And it's like, no, you're just a woman who has hunger and cravings and desires and an appetite for life. Celebrate that. And so, so much of the work is like not judging ourselves and calling it something like needy, graspy, anxious attachment, whatever the psychology wants to call it. You know, it's okay if you're a little needy. We all have needs, you know?
I love that. Yeah, it's like it's more playful and sometimes all the noise, right? With all the dating advice, like, oh, what's like reading in too much or like reacting too soon, like, but it's like what you're talking about is like just sit, you know, luxuriate in whatever is coming up, even if it feels a little bit.
Totally. Holding the tension.
Mhm,
So much of the feminine journey is patience,
mhm,
right? Because that peony in your yard took years to reach her fullness and her becoming, right? It's gonna take a man as long as it takes him to write you back if that's what's right and rightful for him, right? So having patience, and this is why creating safety in the nervous system is so important to all of it, to
mhm.
dating, to relating, to moving slower, to being connected to our sensuality, is like, can we have patience? Because in that patience is trust. Trust. All is coming. All is coming to you. All is well. Everything is perfect in this now moment.
And that's like the building trust moment by moment. And then when you were talking about like the grasping, right? Like where it felt like anxious, but like being that openness to life, that's like a different that vulnerability feels different.
Hmm. Yeah. What feels different?
It doesn't feel like it's coming from lack. It feel like it's
Mm.
anxious, you know?
Mm.
It's more like this like opening up like the peony, like the like by, petal by petal, right?
Mm.
It's
Yes.
like more internal, right? Like it's like opening up to our own fears.
Yeah. Yeah, the slow unfolding with such sweet, like loving awareness and compassion, forgiveness, self-compassion, self-acceptance, celebration of where you are and how you're showing up. Like these are such important pieces of this journey, is like that divine mother. We may not, most of us didn't get it from our actual mothers, but it's inherent within us how to do this. We know in our bones how to be compassionate and how to forgive. We've forgotten, but we know. And so when you slow down and you listen to the seasons of your body and you have the courage to dial down the shame and dial down the guilt and dial down the fear, this you remember how to do it and be it.
So the jungle for you, you were there for 3 years.
Yeah, that's home for me. Yeah.
So would you say it took you that time? Is that where you started the feminine awakening? Would you say that?
I mean, I think I started the journey of a feminine awakening the day I was born. We all did. We all have. Maybe you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, like I feel so far away from that, but you're on the path already.
Mhm.
The moment we enter into this human experience as a woman, we've started the journey. And we may get to a certain point and somebody else may get to a certain point. It's like the journey of the woman is not linear. So even if you ask like when did it, I don't know. And I have been in the jungle for 3 years, and I would say like a good chunk of that time was like ceremony after initiation, after crying on my sheepskin rug and journals and heartbreaks and grief and all of it. That was all an important piece, but there was no beginning, middle, and end. And like I said, I'm still on it, you
Yeah.
know? And so you may have heard me refer to this in the podcast you listened to, but the spiral path is the path of the feminine, right? It's like that big spiral staircase. If you go to like a really nice hotel and there's like this massive spiral staircase, is like the masculine path is we start here and we end here. There's this much time, there's this many metrics, quarter one, quarter two, like we can measure it, time and space. The feminine goes like this and she spirals. And so we meet different versions of ourselves along the way. So it's like on the staircase, like, oh, I meet unworthiness. And I go up a few staircases. Oh, there it is again. And we just keep on re-meeting parts of ourselves. But every time we re-meet them, we're at a little bit more of an expanded state. We trust a little bit more in life. We feel a little bit more safe in our body, right? So we just keep on re-meeting parts of ourselves. And so when I work with women over a year, 2 years, 3 years, this a lot of the same pieces come up, but that does not mean you're not making progress. That does not mean that you're going backwards. You can't go backwards.
Mm. I wanted to ask you when you were, it's a beautiful, right, analogy and illustration of the staircase, the spiral staircase. How do we make sure that we're not circling like the same circle?
That's a great question. So an analogy there, if we go to the spiral staircase, would be like you go up a few steps and then you're like on the same step, just like marching in place. Like you feel maybe like you're moving, but you're actually not. And so the first thing I'll say is trust that. Sometimes you've got to sit down on the step and sob for 6 months.
Mhm.
Trust that. You know, yeah, there may be some like seeming stagnancy in there, but that's what you're meant to do. And we can call in support systems to make sure we just get nudged up. Okay, time to get up now. Let's go up the staircase. Let's keep going. And so that could look like you have sisters in your life that hold you accountable, that check in on you when they notice you're looping, right? Without judgment. It could look like a women's group where you just hold yourself accountable to showing up once a month. It could look like having a mentor or a coach. Most importantly, it goes back to the daily practice, right? So if you're showing up for yourself every day and you're like, oh my God, I'm angry again today, you show up again, I'm angry. You can start to notice when you're looping because it's a mirror. Your
Mhm.
daily practice is a mirror and you're looking at it every day. So, it's okay to loop. I loop. We loop. It's
Mhm.
just a matter of at what moment do I decide to rise up and out. And when we do daily practices, we use things like breath work and yoga and meditation to cultivate energy to help us get up and out. We can't do it without that energy. We
And
need
the
energy
space, right?
and the space and the
Yeah.
forgiveness. And the forgiveness, let it be messy, right? You've probably heard it of like, let your mess be your message, like the messiness is part of it. The messy hair and the jungle feet and the, mascara coming down the face, it's all part of it.
Yeah. Nature is not perfect, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, that's such a beautiful question about the looping. And so having systems in your life that hold you lovingly accountable, self and community holding you accountable.
Mm. I love
Yeah.
that. Because I mean, we need also like, I love how you brought it back also to the practice because that gives you the space and the space to hear, right? The space in between all the doing and to actually hear the answers from within, the answers that come to you, the guidance.
Yeah.
Um, because like if you're just busy, 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 then it's
Yeah,
harder to connect to them.
totally. If you're busy, 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 it's easier to loop, loop, loop.
Right? And then you just can feel like on the treadmill, like on a hamster wheel of like the sameness in a way. Maybe change the partners, maybe change like companies, maybe change, a little bit of the physical form, but largely having similar experiences.
Yeah, totally. That's why I always like to say, like, um, choosing to live a slowed down life, choosing to have a daily practice, choosing to spend a little bit less time online. These are revolutionary acts in our modern world. They are acts of revolution. Choosing to forgive yourself, choosing to have a little self compassion, revolutionary, especially as women in this postmodern feminism era.
Mm.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's very true. And I wanted to ask you about, so right now, can you tell us what you're focused on and like what is your mission right now, Natalie?
Hmm. Gosh, my mission is doing my work every day, like showing up to my practices every day so that I can be relaxed, at ease, in play, so that I can have like love pouring out of my eyes, so that my heart can be open. That is the first and most important piece, is that I embody those things so that regardless of what program I'm launching or what podcast I'm doing, simply walking through the world is the mission, right? Emanating that at the cafe, at the library, at the gas station, someone's like, oh, I feel a little ease, I feel a little peace, and I don't even have to say a word. That's the mission,
Mm.
right? And then the next piece is taking it on a smaller scale and working with women one on one to help walk them home. And then most of the women I work with are either business owners and or mothers. So then they take their emanation of safety, ease, peace, joy and ripple it out into their corporations and ripple it out into their families and ripple it out into their communities and ripple it out into their households. That's the bigger mission, right? So it's like one woman, one being, one community, one business at a time, emanating the possibility that you can be relaxed, that you can be radiant, that you can be safe while thriving, while being successful, that you don't have to sacrifice anything. So the work that I'm doing in the world right now is first and foremost being that,
Mhm.
and then emanating that, and then working directly with women to guide them through that process.
I
Yeah.
love that. And is there an example or two that you can share, that when women step into it, right, open themselves more up to these practices and to living and being, more in this energy and this way, what have you seen change?
Oh my gosh. Ah, women become more present mothers. They become more present with their children. They start receiving reflections from the world around them like, wow, you're so radiant. Wow, you're glowing. Wow, I just want to give to you, right? So the masculine starts to respond to them differently. They start to become aligned with authentic relationships. If they're already in partnership, the man that they're with, like the whole dynamic shifts to one of like cherishing and devotion. They start to express themselves more in their art, in their passions, in their businesses because they feel safe to do so, right? So the women ultimately, in their own unique way, become more of themselves.
Mm.
They just become more of themselves and they start to occupy every space, starting with their body. They start to occupy their body. We can feel them. You can feel her, because she can feel herself. And then being that walking invitation, clients start to magnetize, partners, lovers, experiences, invites, opportunities, fun, like it all just unfolds so beautifully.
And everything that you're saying is so huge because I mean, how many women, and I know that I have felt this way, and like they are living the groundhog day of an existence, right? Of getting through the day, knowing what the next day will be. Like, and this is why I titled the podcast Career in Technicolor, because
Mm,
essentially it's like I want to live life and I wish it for everybody to live in Technicolor versus black and white.
Yes.
So many of us are living black and white, just like the groundhog.
Ah, totally. And it's bringing magic back into the mundane and uh enjoying yourself. And again, when I say enjoy, I don't mean you're on a yacht in the Caribbean in this fantasy. No, you're walking through aisle 4 of Target and life is more meaningful, you
And you're
know?
dancing to NSYNC that came on the radio.
Like nothing else needs to change. This is an inner game. You feel comfortable in your body. You feel safe in your body. You've accepted who you be and you celebrate. And so much of it ripples out then into oh my gosh, now I'm making connections with women that are meaningful because I'm not insecure and I'm not judging her and I'm not jealous and I'm not just life flows, right? And so I love that your podcast is Career in Technicolor. It's like remembering what it feels like to be alive and vibrant. And again, that's going to look different for everyone, but just being the fullest experience and expression of you. That's why you're here. And it's a gift. And when you withhold that, it's a tragedy. I'll say that. It's a tragedy, you know.
I love that. Like, I love what you're talking about, and I love the transformation, obviously, that happens and occurs, once you start. I don't even want to call doing this inner work, but like showing up for yourself, right? Becoming more intimate with yourself. And that's what you were talking about, the intimacy, right? It's all building more intimacy with yourself with the different layers, uh,
Mm.
versus engaging with all the external distractions, right? That are essentially keeping us from it.
Totally. What's coming through here is just a relevant real life example. I had a introductory call with a woman yesterday. And we had a follow-up call today. So 12 hours went by between our first call and our second call. And in that time, I gave her a little bit of home play. I don't call it homework, I call it home play. And her home play was to take half an hour and journal on her desires and go deeper and then do a little dance party and keep on journaling. And what ended up happening in 12 hours was mind blowing. She shows up to our call today. She's got red lipstick on, her hair's down, her whole essence changed. And she's like, all I did was go to Target and my whole life felt different. And
Amazing.
so just like that, you know?
I love it. I love that you pointed it out because life happens like in the day to day, in the smallest moments. It's not just like the wedding, the whatever baby is born, these like
Yeah.
big moments, right? Or vacations, that we take a few times a year, but I think it's really in the daily, I love that you said the magic.
Mm.
And you know what I also wanted to tell you, what I love, um, like from what you communicated, right? What you shared during this conversation, and also from what I saw on your Instagram feed. Like, I love that the benefits, right? And kind of what the transformation that you see women have, that you're not like so many times what I'm seeing is just like, oh, you'll be making 10,000, whatever, six figures. It's all about money, like it's, and not the
Mhm.
commercializing and everything is not, it's a powerful aspect and obviously can be very empowering to make different choices, to have more freedom. And it's definitely nothing bad, but I just love that also I didn't see you and I haven't heard you over focusing on that,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
But the
Because then
frequency.
again, and because if I can't say ahead of time how a woman's gonna open up into her own unique energy, What I do know is she becomes more radiant and playful and sensual and luscious in her own way. Because I've worked with lawyers and doctors and mamas and all across the board. But it's this is the pathless path. And what I like to say to women is you're not a problem to be solved. You are an experience to be celebrated.
I love
Yeah.
that. You're not a problem to be solved. You're an experience to be celebrated. And this is
Yeah.
the matchless path. I just
Yes.
invite everybody to connect with it
Yeah. Yeah.
because our mind wants to grasp on the
Mhm.
proven, like, but show me the
Where's
path.
the
Tell me
data?
exactly the steps.
Where's the data? How long? And this is why it's just like we have to love those parts of ourselves too, because they're protecting us and they want to know, like, what are my results and, all of these things. Is it worthwhile? Like, all of it. We have to love those parts too. And I interface with those parts every initial call I have with women. And it's like, okay, we love those parts. But instead of thinking about it, how about you feel into it? You know?
But this is a part, right? The part that wants to know the how
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
proven, the proven next step. What would you advise? Okay, so somebody's sitting in this place of they've been in work in a career where they're successful, they've progressed, been promoted, are have consistently made more money, maybe even leading teams, um, but they're sitting with this feeling of lack and emptiness inside, feeling that there's something more, but they're not sure what is that purpose. And a part of it is this burning question of how, right? Like, what is it? Do I change companies? Do I change jobs? Do I need to start my own business, right? All these things
Mm-hmm.
that like are possibilities, but they're almost making it worse, right? More overwhelming for the nervous system and the mind. Like, what would you any guidance or kind of how would you recommend
Yeah.
to kind of move from that place closer to their own answers?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. And the first thing I would say is congratulations. You've reached a moment in your journey where you're even thinking that there is another thing. Because when you're in Groundhog's Day, the what else, what that doesn't even cross your mind. So when you're at that moment where you're like pausing for a moment and you're zooming out and you're like curious, I'm like, welcome, welcome, welcome to your transformation. Welcome to your becoming. That's the first step. So, celebrating that moment of curiosity, even if it feels like overwhelm, even if it feels like paralysis by analysis of all the possibilities, have gratitude for being there because that means something's already changing, you know? And then the next piece is, and I sound like a broken record here, but slow down, create space, and sit with yourself every day. Start there before you get the divorce or you sign the contract or you leave the person or you fly to Fiji. Just sit with yourself every day and ask yourself the question, what does the wanting want? What's the thing beneath the thing beneath the thing? Because it's not about changing this or adding that or leaving. It's actually like, what is what is the wanting want? Let that be revealed. Is it a desire for community? Is it a desire to be seen? Is it a longing for something? That's where the answer lives. Yeah.
I love that. I could talk to you like forever. I think I had written down one question. I saw a post you did
Mhm.
about burden
Uh-huh.
versus
Hmm.
appreciate,
Blessing.
I think,
Bless.
blessing. Yes.
Yeah.
And so many of us sit in this, oh, I have to make food, Oh, I have to clean the house.
Yes.
I have to like all these like daily activities become even things that think we're passionate about
Yes.
come burdens.
Yes. Yeah. You want me to speak to that for a moment? Well, it's so interesting. And again, for those of you who are listening, you can't see, but like even when you said the word burden, do you notice how your body language changed? Your
No,
body
I
language.
believe you.
So, so when she said burden, there was kind of like a this happening. She was like burden, right? So even the energetic of our bodies with that. So what I was referring to in that post was the journey of becoming the immature feminine, which again, nothing wrong. Every single one of us will be and has been an immature feminine at some point in our life, right? It's the young girl versus the initiated woman. So the immature feminine, first of all, thinks she's a burden. She thinks she's a burden. She's apologizing all the time. Her body language is a little bit more collapsed. She's like less likely to express herself, less likely to return the meal at the restaurant that that's not really what she asked for. I'm a burden, I'm a burden, I'm a burden. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry I exist, right? Versus the woman knows that she is a gift. She is a blessing, not from a self-righteous space, that's the princess. The woman knows she is a gift. That peony is a gift. It ain't a burden, right? So there's that switch of I'm a burden, immature feminine. I know who I be. I'm a blessing, mature woman, right? And then speaking to your point of how we relate to the world and our offering to the world and the way we relate to the masculine and our children and our clients, it's like, is the world a burden? Are my clients a burden? Are my children a burden? Is cooking this meal a burden? Is even getting this manicure a burden?
Mhm.
Or thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mm.
What a gift that I get to get my nails done, that I have the resources and the space to do that. What a gift that I have a child that I get to feed with this fresh food from the farmer's market. What a gift, what a gift. Thank you. So it's switching from victim, contracted, life is happening to me, from expanded, open. Yes, I am here. I am giving. I am a gift. The world is a gift. Thank you. Gratitude. That's the shift.
Honestly, like it brought tears to my eyes. Like, yes,
What did it touch for you? What was the piece that
the
what's it?
gift and the blessings, and like it's a mantra I've been telling myself lately is like when I can remember, right, to bring myself like the like to be thankful for walking this path of all these blessings,
Yes.
and that reminding myself. And like when I, invite everybody to remind themselves, like, that you are here to walk the path of blessings.
Yeah, I'm getting chills when you're saying that. It's like, and again, thanking ourselves. Thank you for showing up today, you know? Thank you for showing up today. Just walking that beauty way, thinking, it's like one of my yoga teachers says the attitude of gratitude is the highest yoga there is.
Mm.
And it takes humility to be grateful, you know? It takes humility to get on our knees and say thank you.
Mm. I love
Yeah.
that. And I thank you. And also, like, part of what you said before, it's like it's seeing yourself, right? Seeing your value. Like, it's almost like you validate yourself before looking for the world to validate you.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's an inner game, baby. It always is. And the
Mhm.
world will respond to that. The world responds to that. It's an inner game. The work that I do with women, it's about every day, how is she showing up for herself? What's her inner dialogue? How does she feel? The world responds. Her family unit, her companies, her partners, it all gets affected. But it starts here. This is intimacy, right?
I love what you said, inner game, not inner work, right? Because we can so many times. And this is why that ritual, that devotion essentially to yourself, to your own connection with yourself, you can call it with God, with life force, whatever, right? That powers you, and stepping into the power that you like. I think one of the things, also one of my missions, is really to remind people how powerful you truly are. Like, can you remember, can you step more and more into it and connect with it? But that's where, that ritual brings
Yeah.
you back, and it's like, but we get seduced to think that we need to control like the external factors, right? We need to control the job, like figure it out, like the partner, like say this to do that, like manipulate all these external things. And I love this ending because I promise I will let you go. And that it is an inner game. I think it's perfect. Natalie, can you tell us how people can follow you, connect with you, and get more of you?
Yes, totally. Well, if this podcast resonated, share it, send it to a friend, sprinkle a little magic into her text messages, like share this conversation. I'm on Instagram at the Natalie Adele, and I'll send you links, Vaibad, that you can share below. And I'll also share a link for a sadhana daily practice free guide. It's all about cultivating steps to cultivate a nourishing daily practice. And within that, I have a masterclass on how to start a daily practice, the benefits, guided meditations. I mean, it sets you up for everything we spoke about today of like, okay, how do I start a daily practice? I got you covered. So I'll send you the link for that. And if you're curious to take this work deeper and work one-on-one with me, I'll also share a link for an application session with me. And it's like a nice, long, juicy 90-minute deep dive where we get to meet in that virtual space.
Beautiful. I'll add it all in the show notes so you can click and access it directly. And I want to say thank you, Natalie. I'm so grateful to connect
Yeah,
with you for your
thank you
time
so
and for
much
connecting.
for the inspiring questions and for receiving me and for allowing yourself to be moved and touched by life. I see you. Yeah. Thank you,
Thank you.
sister. Mwah.